Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Modern Warfare 3 has been out for a few days now, and I've put in a lot of hours on this game so far, losing a bit of sleep because of it. And with that today, now that I've got a good amount of playtime logged, I wanted to go through and talk about if Modern Warfare 3 is even worth it. Is this game actually good? And give you guys my objective, brutally honest feedback on what I like and what I definitely do not like about this game, because I feel very strongly about some things in one way or the other. So as we get into it all, if you enjoy the video, do me a favor, drop a like on it. It would be really appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, every single day I'm your one-stop shop for all things going on in COD, whether it's news, updates, meta breakdowns, tips, it's all right here. So feel free to hit that subscribe button and join us on the road to 1 million subscribers. But let's start initially here with some of the more neutral things, things that I don't necessarily love or hate. There's not much here. There's definitely more opinionated stuff on both sides of what I like and dislike as we get further on into the video. Ultimately here, we are trying to be as respectful as possible, because respectful criticism is what makes the game better at the end of the day. So if you want to leave your feedback in the comments below, I know devs are oftentimes watching these videos. It's a great place to ideally help improve the overall quality here. But as for my neutral opinions, things that are just all right, initially the carry forward content, it's definitely a bit overwhelming for maybe a new player, having hundreds of guns to now be able to use and have a billion different attachments. It's cool in some cases, like I'm a fan of being able to use some of the compensators or grips that I've used in MW2 because I know they work well and they really do benefit certain playstyles. At the same time, I also don't love the fact that I'm still seeing a lot of content that I've already seen and used for the past year. Makes it feel a bit more stale, I guess, in a faster sense. But I mean, there's pros and there's cons to that, hence why it's sort of in my neutral area. And then also the maps. Obviously, we have all reused or remastered maps for the 16 core 6v6 maps from MW2 2009. I like most of them. There are definitely some bad ones, but overall I don't feel too strongly in one way or the other with the maps, and we got plenty of actual new unique ones coming up here in just a couple of weeks time. But now getting into some of my more opinionated stuff, what is good and what is bad about Modern Warfare 3. Let's start with the negatives here, the cons, things I do not like. First and foremost, an obvious one, the skill-based matchmaking. As someone who has logged an absurd amount of hours on this game already, I've kind of seen it all. First, starting off and, you know, not having a bunch of players super familiar with the game, the lobbies felt a bit easier. Then as players unlock some of the more meta stuff, they get certain perks, equipment, weapons, it gets sweatier and sweatier and sweatier. And as someone who's going for camo challenges and leveling up every single weapon in the game, I'm stuck using a lot of very mediocre guns, and it's like, man, I would love to have a game where I can just mess around with this gun and not run into constant meta stuff and not run into guys sweating like crazy. But that's just the state of COD. Skill-based matchmaking or engagement optimized matchmaking is there because it makes them money. It's probably never going to change. And ultimately, the biggest con with it is that it kills connection quality. I shouldn't have to suffer in terms of connection and have worse ping or more packet loss because I'm doing well in game. That's just a really stupid way to go about it. Ping should be the priority. Connection should be king when it comes to matchmaking. But like I said, as much as this is a con for me and probably a ton of players in this game and a significant drawback that sort of lessens the experience, it's probably never going to change. Getting into things that could change though with my cons, the spawns, sort of rhyming accidentally there, they are a little bit better than the beta in some modes and on some maps, but also there are some very, very bad spawns in this game as well. Sledgehammer's always sort of had this trend of like the game starts and the spawns are and by the end of the year they actually are pretty good. They usually evolve them pretty quickly and efficiently, so I'm confident that the spawns will change over time, but there are definitely some bad ones. Hardpoint in specific is just abysmal. You spawn with the enemies, they spawn right behind you for like the entire match. It's pretty rough. The spawns still need a lot of work. Sort of piggybacking off of the SBMM talk a bit ago, the servers and the connection quality, these are still rough as well in various different areas. The connection quality in some matches is very bad, where like the entire server is getting packet loss. There's other times where it just feels like the net code is absolutely atrocious and your bullets are going through players, or it seems like you're getting fried, but then your guns take forever to kill. And it's just that bad connection quality, that bad net code, or the server tick rate, whatever it may be, COD servers have been trash for a while in comparison to other games of this size, which is extremely disappointing. I wish we had some serious server upgrades. Again, this is something that I'm not as hopeful will change, but it's absolutely something I'm going to continue to call out year over year because the servers just suck straight up. There's not a ton of consistency there. Another thing that is actually new this year with MW3 that I'm definitely not a fan of, the armory system. Locking base things like weapons or perks or streaks or a gear or equipment, whatever the case may be, behind these mandatory challenges is really weird in my opinion. I much prefer the base rank up and unlock system from level 1 to 55. You go through, and once you hit 55, you've got all the weapons, all the base perks and gear and equipment, everything like that. Instead, now you can reach level 55 and still be missing, you know, half of the game's content when it comes down to it. There's like 58 different things you have to go through and unlock now in the armory unlocks, and these require daily challenges to get started, and half the time the daily challenges aren't tracking, and then it's just based on your win bonus. Every time you win, you get credit for 1, and some of these take, you know, 8 unlocks to actually get, so you got to win 8 games to unlock, you know, an aftermarket part or a weapon, which is just so tedious. For people who play a lot, it won't be a problem in the long run. You'll get all the stuff, but for casuals who don't have much time on their hands, this system just actually is awful. It's so deterring and so demoralizing as a player to know, oh, if I want to use this gun, I'm going to have to wait weeks because I'm not going to have enough time to go through and fully get this. Unless, of course, I buy a bundle and I spend real money on the game, and then I might be able to get it quicker, which is just absolute BS, right? Not really a fan of that whatsoever. Another thing that I'm a bit disappointed in is the lack of combat pacing. I thought this was a great thing back in Vanguard, one of the standouts from that year, and a lot of these maps from MW2 are a bit larger for 6v6. I feel like they would play fantastic with 8v8 or even 10v10. Having combat pacing in the game, I feel like would be so awesome, and I'm really bummed that that's not in the game. They did, however, say that they might be experimenting with, you know, squad sizes and playlist sizes in the future with some limited time modes, so perhaps we've got that to look forward to. We'll have to wait and see. Next up, another thing that I'm not a fan of is lobby disbanding. Another thing that I really don't expect to change, and we pretty much knew it was going to be in the game beforehand, but there have been several matches already where we fight a team and it's a close game and it's like there's some trash talk going on. I want to rematch these guys, but it kicks us all out. And if we happen to get put back into the same lobby again because of SBMM, so be it. But if you want to continue staying in that lobby, you can't. I think that hurts connection quality. If you find one match where the servers feel really good and you have good ping, next match, it's not going to be consistent. It's not going to be the same. Lobby disbanding is definitely disappointing. And then lastly, this is something that's encompassed everything in the game so far, and it existed last year too. The UI is still bad. I'm still browsing Hulu or Netflix every time I go into the menu. It's annoying, it's convoluted, and I'm not a fan of it. The UI is not good, and unfortunately, this again is probably not something that's going to change because it's tied to the COD HQ, and this is something that's going to be sort of seamless year over year, so definitely a big bummer there. The UI I am not a fan of for the most part. In-game, there's good things with the UI, but the menus really is where my quarrels and where my beef is there. Not really a big fan of those. But then let's get into the pros, the things that I like about this game, because admittedly, there is a lot that I do enjoy about MW3. I will say I'm enjoying this multiplayer experience far more than Modern Warfare 2, probably more than Vanguard and Cold War, maybe even MW 2019, because certain things have changed for that as well. But of course, we're also sort of in the honeymoon phase still. This might change over time, but for the most part, I am having a good time. And with my pros initially here, I love the camos. The camo system this year, fantastic. There's so much to grind out for multiplayer than even zombies as well. Obviously, we're just focused on multiplayer for this review, but the camo system in general is awesome. The unlocks are pretty easy. They're not super tedious or obnoxious this year, and they actually look fantastic. As I've been going through and leveling up weapons and unlocking some of the base camos, I'm finding a ton that it's like, man, I actually really want to use this right now over something like Ghoulie or some of my mastery camos from last year. You know, if I'm comparing them to those, it's like, man, for a base camo, this is really good. I like the look of a lot of these. They knocked it out of the park with the camos. As far as some of the core gameplay goes, the gunfights and the TTK, these things together, I'm actually a really big fan of right now. I like the feel of these weapons a lot. They don't have maybe as much personality as some weapons did in like MW2 in terms of recoil and sound and feel, but I do like the fact that there is versatility in these weapons. Rifles can be used up close, mid-range, long range. Some of the SMGs can be built to be mad aggressive, but also some can be used in the mid-range as well. With the conversion kits, you can do a lot of cool things with the gunfights there. So the gunsmith system, the way that you can build attachments into, convenient builds, I love that. It's going to be even more convenient with the detailed stats. That's another huge pro for me. So the gunsmith system, optimizing your setups, leading into really convenient, really smooth and fluid gunfights alongside a TTK that feels very competitive. There are a lot of fights where you actually have a chance to outplay an enemy. That all sort of combined really feels great to me. The gunplay, the gunfights, and the gunsmith system really is fun so far, in my opinion. Another thing that sort of factors into those gunfights, obviously, is the movement. And for the most part, I'm a big fan of this. I do think there are some bugs, there have been since launch, in regards to tac sprints and how much that's actually refreshing and correctly functioning. But slide canceling, even the tac stance, I'm a fan of in certain fights and with certain guns. The movement in general in this game, it's nice to be back to a fluid COD, and it's not like you're walking in mud with concrete boots on at all times like an MW2. The movement obviously is a huge step up and more back to what it was in Warzone 1 or MW 2019, which is oftentimes considered the best movement in COD in recent years. Sort of an out-of-game thing that I'm really enjoying about MW3 so far is the communication. Sledge has been pretty on top of things, updating their Trello board. Their day one patch notes obviously was very much so filled with changes based on player feedback from the beta rather than just things they thought, oh, maybe we should just change this for the sake of change. Unlike a certain game last year, the communication, it's been very good. I really hope it continues to be this consistent and this transparent throughout the year. If it doesn't, it might be something that changes to a con by the end of the year, but for now, their communication has been very, very good. Looking forward a bit, another thing that I think is solid about MW3 is the content pipeline. We know for sure we're going to have a ton of content coming up with every single seasonal update. They've already confirmed 12 brand new 6v6 maps are going to be coming throughout the content year. 3 with season 1, 3 with season 2, and then the rest of those 6 throughout the year. We're going to see some fan favorite maps from other CODs return, maybe MW3, Advanced Warfare, some of the other Sledgehammer titles. We're going to see some MW2 2022 maps return, but actually with good movement, so they might actually flow good. The weekly challenge system, allowing for long-term content unlocks every single season is solid. Just the content pipeline throughout the year already seems very promising, and that's definitely something I'm excited for. MW2's was pretty lackluster because there wasn't much going on post-launch for multiplayer specifically. Another pro that I have for the most part is the audio, mainly just being able to hear enemies in game, whether that be directional gunfire or footsteps primarily, stuff like that, being able to know, okay, there's a couple of enemies down this alley that I'm about to push into, or I know this person's pushing me right now and they're getting closer and closer and closer, and I can pre-fire them because I know I heard them coming. That is really solid. There are some audio things that I don't love, like some of the guns don't really sound that great as opposed to MW2 and whatnot, but for the important competitive audio stuff, it's really good this year for the most part. I am using awareness a lot, the bone conduction headset or whatever it's called, so that's definitely helping out. But I do like the fact that I can actually gain information from audio this year, and it's not a huge gamble like in years past. Then lastly here with my pros, it's the new gear and vest system. I actually really like this approach to gameplay, mainly because you can focus in on certain play styles so much. If you want to go all in on playing mad aggressive with movement, you can build up great movement stats with certain vests stacked with certain gloves stacked with certain boots. That I really love. If you want to play it a bit more, slow and tactical, for instance, you can do that as well. You can really go all in on how you want your game to feel with the setups here that is a bit different from perks in the past. So that to me is another cool innovation. It's not like drastically changing the perk system as we know it, but it is offering some more unique gameplay styles to shine, which is very, very cool at the end of the day. Now, all of that being said, is Modern Warfare 3 actually good? I will say I think it's a better game than MW2, which is interesting despite the fact that it was developed in a much shorter time. Now, the game does feel a bit unfinished. You can tell this was a rushed COD when you look at it as a whole, as opposed to the recent titles for sure. But for the multiplayer experience here, I think there is a lot more good than there is bad. And I think this year has a lot more potential than in years past as well. Is it worth the $70 price tag though? That's the big question. And unfortunately, the answer here isn't objectively, yes, it's worth it. No, it's definitely not. It's a lot more subjective to what you're going to get out of this game. If you are someone who grinds Call of Duty because you like to go for the mastery camos, or you like to, have all your weapons ready for Warzone, if you're simply using it as a weapon leveler, you're probably not going to get as much out of those $70 as you would if you were playing multiplayer for the entire year and consistently coming back for the new seasons, playing all the new LTMs, whatever the case may be. But with that $70 base price tag, how many hours are you going to put into this? Are you going to put 70 hours into this over the course of the next year? If so, that's $1 per hour. Maybe that value is pretty good to you. If you're simply using this to, test out the gameplay a bit and maybe prep a little for Warzone, but then just play that and level up weapons in Warzone come launch, probably not going to be all that worth it for you. If you're someone who is, looking at MW3 just for the campaign, definitely not worth it. The story is way too short and not really all that great in my opinion. Zombies seems all right, but again, it just depends on how much time you really think you're going to commit to it. Also, are you someone who's actively involved in microtransactions? Because if you're spending the base $70 on this game and you're already, concerned, is this going to be worth it? Am I going to get value out of this price tag? A lot of the content throughout the year, things that might be beneficial, pay to win at some point. It's going to be another $20 or $30 with those bundles as well. The battle passes every single season if you're interested in getting those. Also adding more if you want the black cell upgrades. So there's a lot of price tags involved in this, and it really comes down to, are you getting the value back out of that? Will you actually get the playtime back out of the money you put in? If you are, it's probably worth it. If you're not, and it's maybe only something you're going to play until the next big AAA title drops, it might not be as worth it. In my opinion, I do think this is probably one of the better CODs in the past few years. It's done a lot of things that for my playstyle and what I want out of a multiplayer, it fits really well for me. So I'm looking at this game as like a 7 or an 8 out of 10. I would like a little bit more unique content in it. There are definitely some innovations that were left out because of the rush development period for it. And I think that's where most of the drawbacks with this game stem from. But for the most part, I do think this is an improvement on what was a disastrous year for MW2 from my perspective. Ultimately, though, I would weigh how much time you actually see yourself putting into this game to determine if it is worth buying. If you're looking for something more similar to MW 2019 and Warzone 1, this is the closest we've been probably since MW 2019 and Warzone 1. If you're looking something similar to MW2, despite the fact that a lot of this game feels like a DLC to MW2, it's definitely not that. It's a complete 180 in terms of gameplay. But yeah, those are my general thoughts on MW3 so far. Decent game for sure, depending on what you're trying to get out of it. That is going to wrap things up though. If you enjoyed the video, do me a favor, drop a like on it. And if you're new here, feel free to hit that subscribe button on your way out to guarantee you're up to date every single day with all things going on in COD. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy. Have an awesome rest of your day. I'll catch you later. Peace out.